began with a single footprint. Not a scream, not a call to 911, not even a known motive, just a muddy, partial footprint in the hallway of a suburban Minnesota home. In a case that left the entire Midwest in disbelief, what seemed like a simple home invasion would unravel into one of the most methodically chilling murders the state had ever seen. This is the story of a murder solved not by witnesses or a confession, but by something as simple as a footprint. The small town of Woodbury, Minnesota, is known for its quiet streets and friendly neighbors. It is the kind of place where crime means a stolen bike or a teenage prank, not cold-blooded murder. That is why the discovery of 42-year-old Cynthia Wallace, lying lifeless in the foyer of her home, shook the community to its core. Her death was sudden, brutal, and inexplicable. There was no sign of forced entry, no witnesses, no calls for help. Just her body, sprawled at the foot of the stairs, with a deep head wound and blood staining the carpet beneath her. Investigators arrived at the scene on March 2, 2025. From the beginning, they knew this was no accident. Cynthia's husband, Marcus Wallace, had returned home after a late-night business dinner to find the house dark and eerily silent. When he stepped inside, he discovered his wife and dialed 911 in a panic. He was frantic, sobbing on the call, begging for someone to help. The paramedics who arrived minutes later confirmed what Marcus already knew. Cynthia was gone. Inside the house, nothing appeared to be missing. Her jewelry was still on the dresser. Her purse remained untouched. There were no signs of a struggle, but then a crime scene tech spotted something odd on the hardwood floor, just a few feet from Cynthia's body. A partial footprint. It was smudged and incomplete, but it did not belong to Marcus or any first responder. And that was the beginning of something far darker than anyone had imagined. It is at this point where things begin to twist, because the very next morning, news of Cynthia's death hit local headlines. But what the public did not know yet was that this one footprint was going to change the entire trajectory of the investigation. Detectives quickly began to analyze it. The print had a distinct pattern, one that matched a very specific kind of boot, a work boot with a rare sole design manufactured only by a few companies. While this was being analyzed, the police began digging into Cynthia's life. She worked as an elementary school teacher, loved by her students with no known enemies. Her social media was filled with photos of her dog, her book club, and Sunday dinners with her husband. Nothing seemed off, no red flags, no secret double life. But the police knew that sometimes appearances hide the darkest truths. Soon, they began to focus on her inner circle. Her husband, Marcus, was questioned first. He insisted he had nothing to do with it. He had receipts and messages proving he was at the restaurant until nearly 10 p.m. His alibi checked out, but investigators still were not ready to rule him out. They quietly obtained his phone records, searched his car, and even went through the couple's financial history. No signs of infidelity, no suspicious activity, and no sudden life insurance policy changes. Then came an unexpected twist. A week after Cynthia's death, a local construction worker came forward. He had been working on a nearby home renovation project and remembered seeing a man parked in front of the Wallace home around the same time of the murder. The vehicle was a white van. The man, according to the worker, looked like he was casing the place. He had seen him twice before, always in the late afternoon, parked across the street. The description matched someone the police were familiar with, a man named Derek Larson. Derek had a lengthy criminal record involving burglaries, stalking, and most recently, a restraining order filed by an ex-girlfriend. When they pulled up his file, they saw that he had once worked for a carpet cleaning company that had serviced the Wallace residence a few months prior. What is chilling here is what police found when they searched Derek's home. Hidden in a duffel bag in his garage was a pair of muddy boots, the exact kind that matched the rare sole pattern found at the crime scene. Forensics got involved immediately, and within a week, DNA from the carpet at the Wallace house matched Derek's. His fingerprints were not present, but the boots told a different story. When Derek was brought in for questioning, he denied everything. He claimed he had never returned to the house after the cleaning job. He insisted he was home that night, watching TV alone. But investigators were ready. They had security footage from a nearby traffic camera that caught his white van turning onto the Wallace Street just after 9:30 p.m. They had the boots, they had the DNA, and most importantly, they had motive. What nobody had known until then was that Derek had become obsessed with Cynthia after cleaning her house. Emails uncovered in his deleted files showed that he had sent her anonymous messages, disguised compliments, and even disturbing notes disguised as spam. She had ignored them, not realizing that the man who had vacuumed her floors was slowly spiraling into obsession. Police believe he returned that night with the intention of confronting her, or worse. Now, here is where the horror deepens. According to forensic analysts, Cynthia had likely opened the door willingly, either recognizing Derek or assuming he was back for legitimate reasons. There was no forced entry, no broken locks. They believe the two spoke briefly before Derek struck her in a fit of rage. The head wound matched the edge of a steel tool found in Derek's van, a wrench he used on the job. It is painful to imagine the final moments Cynthia endured, alone, cornered in her own home by someone she barely knew. But it was her resilience and the meticulous work of investigators that would lead to justice. The footprint he left behind, that one careless mark, would become the most vital piece of evidence. By April 10, 2025, Derek Larson was officially charged with the murder of Cynthia Wallace. He was held without bail, and the trial that followed captivated the state. Prosecutors built their case on forensic evidence, digital trails, and behavioral profiling. The defense tried to argue that the footprint could have been left during the earlier cleaning job, that the security footage was inconclusive, but the jury did not buy it. In June, Derek was found guilty of first-degree murder. He showed no emotion when the verdict was read. Cynthia's family, seated in the front row, wept in silence. Her husband, Marcus, later gave a statement saying, "This is not closure, because nothing can bring Cynthia back, but it is justice, and that means something." What stands out most about this case is not just the brutality of the crime, but the eerie silence surrounding it. No one heard screams. No one saw the killer leave. If it were not for that single footprint, the case may have gone cold. That is the terrifying reality. How close we can come to never knowing the truth. Cases like this remind us that evil does not always come in obvious forms. Sometimes it wears a uniform, sometimes it knocks politely, and sometimes it leaves behind only a trace, just enough to bring the truth to light. Today, the Wallace home remains empty. It has become a ghost of what it once was, a quiet house with a tragic past. But Cynthia's story lives on, in the minds of those who loved her, and in the legacy of an investigation that refused to give up. Her life, though cut short, became the catalyst for a renewed focus on forensic evidence across the state. There is also a sobering takeaway here. Cynthia did not know she was in danger. She lived cautiously, loved openly, and worked to help others. She had no idea that someone had formed a dark fixation on her. The threat came not from someone in her life, but from someone just outside of it, on the periphery, watching, waiting. And in that lies a universal fear. that violence can find us in the safest spaces, that behind a smile, a stranger may be hiding twisted intent, but also that truth, no matter how well hidden, always leaves a trail, even if it is just a footprint. If you found this story gripping, subscribe to Dark Case Diaries for more true crime documentaries every week. Share Cynthia's story so others can understand the importance of vigilance, community, and justice, because sometimes it takes only one clue to solve a murder, and one voice to make sure the victim is never forgotten.